Hello, everybody, and welcome to another OpenShift Commons briefing. Today, we're going to get a presentation from some of the key members of the KeyCloak community on KeyCloak for cloud natives. And I'm looking forward to hearing this because KeyCloak is one of my favorite projects and hidden secrets in the OpenShift ecosystem, and I think it deserves wider airplay. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Boleslaw and Stian introduce themselves. The format will be ask questions in the chat. We'll try and answer them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have live Q&A at the end, and we'll answer your questions there. So with that, Boleslaw, take it away.
Hello. So my name is Boleslaw Dawidowicz. I'm engineering manager at Red Hat, responsible for the KeyCloak RHSO team, and I'm also a chief architect in middleware, responsible for security. And with me is Stian Torgersen, who is a project lead for KeyCloak. And we want to show you the KeyCloak project. And all right, thank you. Okay, so here is the agenda. We'll tell you what is KeyCloak. We'll try to show what are the key strengths and give a high-level overview of the architecture. And shortly, actually, we'll try to start with showing you what KeyCloak is and what it does in a demo. Besides that, we'll talk more about KeyCloak community and also how does it compare with our competitors in this space and where are we heading regarding our roadmap. So first of all, the reason we are doing this presentation is we want to help you to be cloud native. And I'll explain why we believe we can do so. So recently, we've done a community survey. So we asked our community how they're using KeyCloak. We asked for their favorite features. We asked for feedback, where should we improve. We had a pretty good turnaround. We hit nearly 100 responses within like a week or two. And one of the surprising facts was how people deploy KeyCloak. So KeyCloak is a Java middleware project. And traditionally, the consumption method for Java project is just zip distribution. Because it's a JVM-based solution, you just unzip and run with Java. But actually, Docker is on a good path to surpass our zip usage. And combining OpenShift, Kubernetes, and Docker and AWS, way over half of our deployments are actually cloud-based, it seems. So we do believe we actually are a good solution and quite a good fit in a cloud-native world, because we see that KeyCloak is being used in such scenarios and environments heavily. Now, what is KeyCloak? KeyCloak, first of all, is an open source project. It is an identity and access management solution. And it is a project as a solution designed for modern applications, API, and services, so cloud native mainly. And at a very high level, you connect your application with KeyCloak using some common standards like OpenID Connect or UMA, which are both OAuth2 based, or SAML2. And then via KeyCloak, you can integrate with a lot of other solutions, and your applications can gain certain token-based security capabilities. So first of all, KeyCloak is an OpenID Connect, so OAuth2 authorization server, talking the language of the specification. And we actually certify on all 5 OpenID Connect standards. We are SAML2 identity provider, according to the SAML2 standard, and we also implement UMA, user managed access specification, which is also extending OAuth 2 protocol. And on top of this, so all the capabilities exposed by the server, you can get access to them via REST endpoints. And we have a very good and nice and easy to use admin UI using those REST endpoints and a command line interface. And one of the key and major focuses of KeyCloak is to arm developers with security capabilities for their applications. So with easy integration with KeyCloak, you gain a lot of capabilities you don't need to implement yourself, so you won't make any mistakes implementing them. So login screens and registration for application, various social in general authentication methods you can easily configure, a set of screens for user self-management, base set of identity management capabilities in terms of users, roles, or group management, session management, so for example, single login or logout of number of applications or clients which are authenticated with certain identity. Very basic needs like different password policies, base airbag, so role-based access control, or if you need, actually fairly complex attribute-based access control using custom chained policies. In addition, we try to really follow the upstream efforts like Kubernetes or Istio service mesh. So KeyCloak has been one of the first authorization servers, so well, identity solutions, which had some early demos for Istio. And because Istio as a project is leveraging OpenID Connect for end-user authentication mechanisms, we are quite a good fit because OpenID Connect is a center of what we do in KeyCloak. So we try to follow this footstep, and we try to be the best solution for Istio as it gets developed. Okay, now let me switch to Stian, and he will show you how KeyCloak looks like and how does it work. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
No. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay, good. So I hope that was what the demo guards had in store for me for today, and everything else goes smoothly. Right. So what I'm going to show is I'm going to deploy KeyCloak onto OpenShift, and I'm also going to deploy a Node.js application or service, and I'm going to deploy an HTML5 application. I'm going to show how these can easily be secured with KeyCloak with everything running on top of OpenShift. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and deploy KeyCloak, and I have KeyCloak a template deployed to this OpenShift instance already, so it's available in my catalog, and I simply just select that, and I will select the admin username and password that I can remember for logging in and showing the admin console later on. And that is pretty much it. So now I have KeyCloak being deployed, and while we're waiting for that to start, I'm going to deploy the Node.js service that we're going to be securing. And I'm going to be using the Node.js S2I so that I can get my code easily up onto OpenShift. So I'll give it a name, and I'll paste in the repository for the code that I have. And I'm going to add on the secure root. Seeing as this is token-based security, it's important to have secure roots for everything. And the one thing I need to configure into this service is the URL for KeyCloak, so that the service knows where KeyCloak is deployed. And I can get this easily from the OpenShift console. And then I'll go and create this. So while we're waiting for that, we're going to go off and we're going to deploy this HTML5 application. I've chosen to wrap this up as a PHP because that lets me inject configuration values into the application, as I need to configure where the service is deployed and also where KeyCloak is deployed. I'll paste in my code there for this one. And again, I want to be using the secure root. And now I need to give it the KeyCloak URL And I also want to give it the URL for the service so it knows where to invoke the service. And then we'll create this. Okay, so now we have all our three things deployed into our OpenShift project. So let's go and take a look at the KeyCloak admin console. So we're getting a warning here because we're using self-signed certificates, which is fine obviously for development, but in production you would use proper certificates obviously. Right, so what we need to do is that we need to create a realm for our demo, as well as a client and a user and a couple of roles. To shorten down the time a little bit, I have a prepared file that contains all the details. It's a JSON file that basically pulls in all the configuration that we need. So what that did is that it created this realm called demo, and then it created a client. And this is what's needed for KeyCloak to be aware of your application, because an application needs to be registered with KeyCloak to be able to do a login. And it also needs to have the URL of the application so that it knows that it doesn't redirect to any unknown or untrusted applications. It also created two roles that we'll be using. It created an admin role and a user role. And finally, it created a user for me to be able to log into the application. Now we can go back to the application, and we see it's a very simple HTML5 application, and it has a login button. Behind this login button, it basically just calls the KeyCloak JavaScript adapter and just calls login on that. That's all it has to do to be able to provide login capabilities to this application. So when I click on the login, I'm redirected to KeyCloak to perform the authentication with KeyCloak. That means that the application itself doesn't have to provide the login screen, doesn't have to handle passwords or any other forms of authentication. So now I'm logged in, and the application is able to pull from the token that it gets some details about who I am. In this case, just for simplicity, it's providing my username, but the application has access to other details about me as well. And now I can invoke this service. So I have a public endpoint that doesn't need any security, and I have a secured endpoint that needs an access token that the application obtained from KeyCloak that contains this user role. It also has an admin endpoint, which I'm not currently allowed to invoke, and that's because my user hasn't been given this role. So I can obviously manage all my users nicely through KeyCloak. So to be able to make myself into an admin, all I need to do is go to the role mappings, and I'll add this role to my user. If I now go back to the application and refresh the page so that I get a new token that now includes this admin role, I can now successfully invoke the admin endpoint. And we can have a very quick look at seeing how little changes is needed to the application and the services to be able to use the KeyCloak adapters. So we have a very simple Node.js service here. Basically, it pulls in the KeyCloak Connect adapter, which is our Node.js adapter. And then it has a configuration file for the adapter to know some details about how it should use KeyCloak. All of this is hard-coded except for the URL for KeyCloak in this case. It's injecting that from the environment variable. And I can see how easy it is from the Node.js code to be able to actually secure the endpoints. So to be able to start using KeyCloak, all it needs to do is just to initialize the adapter, and then it can protect the endpoints. In this case, you can see that the service/secured endpoint is using this KeyCloak protect to require the user role to be able to invoke that particular endpoint. So we can have a quick look at the HTML5 application as well. As I said, I used the PHP S2I image for this, and that allows me to, again, dynamically build this configuration file that the JavaScript adapter does to be able to then put in this KeyCloak URL from the environment variables. And we can see how easy it is for the application to actually do the login. And the login button, all it does is to basically call the KeyCloak.login method. And then the JavaScript adapter will handle all the OpenID Connect and the OAuth flows and all the dance around that for you. Okay, so now we have a few minutes that we can spend to just have a little look at some features available in KeyCloak. One thing I wanted to show was how easy it is to enable login with external identity providers. In this case, we're going to use GitHub. And all I need to do is to go to GitHub, and I need to create a client configuration in GitHub. And then I need to get the client ID and the client secret and add that to KeyCloak. And that's all I need to do to be able to log in via GitHub to my applications. So I can see now if I go back and I log in again, I now have this link to be able to log in via GitHub. And there you go. Now I've been logged in and a user has been created on behalf of my GitHub user inside KeyCloak. So I can have a look at that. I can now see that in the users, we now have 2 users. And we can see that this second user that was created has a link to GitHub, and it provides the details about what GitHub account it's linked to. The other things that we can do through the admin console is that we can link to external user storage providers. These could be LDAP directories or custom relational databases. And again, we can configure these very easily through the admin console. And once that's up, then we can start letting users from the external LDAP directory also be able to log into our applications. So taking a look at a couple of more things before we move on with the presentation. We have ability to customize authentication flows completely. And again, you can customize the authentication flows in the KeyCloak server, and there is no changes needed to your applications to now allow users to log in a different fashion. We can also, for instance, enable some password policy. So we can say that users will have to, spend passwords of at least 8 characters length, and we can build out the policies as we want. And we have lots and lots of other features that you can enable and configure through the admin console itself. So for instance, if we wanted users to be able to self-register, or we want users to be able to recover their passwords if they lose these, or we want users to be able to keep their sessions when they restart their browsers or computers, then these are just a toggle away. And now when I log into the application again, I now have more features available to the login to the application, obviously all without having to redeploy the application or make any changes to my application. So that's it for the demo part. Now I've got a few more things to cover before I'll hand over to Volk. So I mentioned some key strengths for KeyCloak. It's always been built with a mind of making life easy for application developers. And we do this by providing client adapters for your applications. And these are called adapters rather than just libraries, because we try to tie in closer with the frameworks and the underlying containers to provide you a much simpler approach of securing your applications and services. We're also working on a Go-based proxy adapter, and this can be seen as an external adapter to your application that can be deployed as a sidecar on OpenShift that will allow you to secure any language or any framework without having to make any changes at all. And of course, all of this works with any OpenID Connect libraries out there today as well. So one thing that I just showed was the ability to log in with GitHub. And of course, you can also log in with any SAML2 providers, any OpenID Connect providers, so enterprise level IDPs, as well as many other social providers. And we also have support to be able to bridge to Kerberos desktop SSO, so that you can have a seamless login in those cases as well. And of course, the same realm can have many external identity providers, and it can also pull in users from many external user stores. And these can be LDAP directories or Active Directories, or it could be a custom relational database. So KeyCloak has always been built with scale in mind, and clustering, we've had clustering from day one, so within a single data center. And we've recently added support to be able to cluster across multiple data centers. This is a feature that's currently in tech preview, and we're hoping to polish this and make it easier to set up, where the main issue that we're having today is that the setup can be a little bit complicated, which we hope to try to eliminate to make this an easy thing for people to be able to use. So not only can we do centralized authentication and dealing with those aspects. We also have support for centralized authorization. And this is obviously perfect for microservices where you want to extract the policies and permissions out of your services and manage these centrally. There is a number of built-in policies that you can build up your permissions from, but you can also deploy your own custom policies, and you can define your permissions and your access in the way that you would want to. So KeyCloak is lightweight and it's easy to start using. Obviously, we're aiming to provide an out-of-the-box experience with minimal amount of steps to get it up and running. It's based on a JVM, so it's portable, and there's no hard system dependencies, which makes it easy to get it up and running. It's also lightweight, so you can run it on your laptop alongside all of your development tools when you're doing development. So let's take a little look at the internal architecture for KeyCloak. KeyCloak is built on top of an application server, and we've chosen to use Wildfly, which obviously the application server is then layered on top of the Java virtual machine. The reasoning for this is that we wanted to provide, create KeyCloak into an enterprise level IDP, and we wanted to have clustering aspects and transactions and other enterprise level features without having to spend too much time wiring this up and doing this logic ourselves. So by using the application server, the Wildfly, we get a number of features that we would otherwise have to build out and work on ourselves. KeyCloak itself is layered on top of a thin core. The core does basically just bootstrapping and wiring. It does a bit of configuration, and it has a number of SPIs. So SPIs is an API that allows you to deploy your own custom providers. That lets you customize any aspect of KeyCloak. So for instance, we have SPIs for the login protocol, for storage, for authentication, for identity providers, events, and we have a total of 73 SPIs. So basically all aspects of KeyCloak is made as a pluggable architecture and a highly customizable architecture. On top of this, it's a theming system that allows you to customize all the login screens and the admin console and the account management console and make these adapt your corporate identities, and also allows you to change them slightly and add new features if you want to. And then finally, everything is exposed obviously to REST endpoints, and we have the admin console that sits on top of that, and we have a login pages that sits on top of that, and we also have the self-service or account management console that lets your users manage their own accounts. So taking a look at how we use these SPIs, we're looking at how we deal with storage. We've decided to only support relational databases and not have alternatives like NoSQL or file-based systems. That's because we would want to prefer to focus on one implementation rather than thin out and try to support everything. And relational databases was obvious from the fact that it's enterprise grade and obviously has high quality transaction support. So we have one layer that implements the database, which stores all the realms, the users and clients, and obviously this is a pluggable thing that you plug into the KeyCloak. And then on top of this sits a caching layer, which uses InfiniSpan, and that talks to the database layer. And this caching layer is not hard linked to the fact that it's a database underneath. So if we were to want to support a different type of storage in the future, we can still keep the caching layer intact, or we could change the caching layer and keep the database layer intact. So everything is built with being pluggable and being modifiable in the future if we need to. So we can look at one more example for how SPIs are used. So we have login protocol, which is an SPI, and we've implemented the OpenID Connect and the SAML2 providers for this login protocol. And there's also community maintained protocols for WS Federation and CAS. And these are all deployable directly to KeyCloak without having to fork or change the underlying code base in any way. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Boleslaw to continue the presentation.
Okay. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about KeyCloak community. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So KeyCloak as a project started around early 2014. The origins of it are quite interesting. So there were two prototypes. One was implemented by Stian, who's with us here, and one by Bill Burke. One being around easy security for REST endpoints, and the other providing security as a service for applications. And when we put together it as a project and released it around June, actually we had a very fast, like skyrocketing adoption. The reason behind it, we believe, was like twofold. One was that we had a very easy to use UI, and people were really able to pick it up and secure their applications very quickly with it. The other was because they were pretty focused prototypes, pretty complete ones. Like very early on, we had a very complete and usable software. And actually later on, we were very surprised with people going into production with early alphas of KeyCloak. We had pretty nice GitHub statistics, so, growing all the time. And the good part about KeyCloak is, even though there is a strong group of Red Hat employees working on it, all of the discussions regarding design and development are happening in public mailing lists. And we have a healthy traffic on those, both from people from Red Hat and from people external to Red Hat. So it's a very healthy and vibrant community. The number of Docker pulls of our Docker image is quite impressive. Those are the statistics for very recent releases. And KeyCloak, since very early days, has been released. First, we released it like every 6 weeks. Now we are trying to make a KeyCloak release every 3 weeks. So we really try to be very active, pushing out what we do. So if you see numbers for very recent releases, that's a pretty strong user base. So we did a query on people who contribute to GitHub. So those are the company names obtained from GitHub profiles of KeyCloak commuters. As you can see, those people contributing to KeyCloak are related to pretty recognizable and quite impressive list of organizations. At Red Hat, there are over 20 people working full-time on a project. And yeah, there are a lot of other people contributing from Red Hat, so I would say that the number of people engaged in from only Red Hat is even greater. The interesting part about KeyCloak websites is that every time we check the statistics, there is a group of people actively looking at it. But so this is the weekly number of users from one of the recent weeks, and since the very beginning of the project, we see quite a linear growth of visits. As I mentioned at the beginning, recently we've done a survey in our community. We asked a number of questions, but one of them was, are you interested in being a public reference? And those are the organization names people filled into the survey, and for which they tick the box of agreeing to be a public reference. So as you can see, it's a pretty long list, and also quite a few fairly recognizable names here. Another thing we are very proud of as a project is, so in developer world, there is a pretty known company called ToughWorks, and they are famous for their annual technology radar, where they suggest projects to either assess, trial, or like go into production with. And we are considered as a project to trial by them, which actually it's by their standards, it's pretty good mark. And I highlighted the quote. So we are an open source identity and access management solution that makes it easy to secure applications or microservices with little to no code. And that's great description for us, because that's exactly what we try to be. There are a number of other projects in this space that's changing all the time. I will not go into detailed comparison, and I don't want to say anything kind of like one-to-one comparison, because to have a fair project-to-project comparison, it needs to be detailed, and we don't have time for it. But I do want to mention a few things where we think we do stand out. Like I mentioned, we have a very strong and healthy and open community with a high number of active contributors from outside. We try to maintain focus. So actually, there was a question from Peter about the CAS. We try to avoid feature creep, so we bet on OpenID Connect and SAML, and therefore decided deliberately to not have WS Federation or CAS support in KeyCloak. Although it's very interesting, because we also desire to be highly customizable and pluggable, like Stian explained with the APIs. And if you Google CAS or WS-Fed and KeyCloak, you will find plugins which are actively maintained. Like you can see comments from like this or last week in those repositories, which are fairly good documented. And you can clearly see people are actively maintaining it, probably using them in production. And this makes us really happy, and we try to make such plugins and such extensions, customization, as easy as possible to maintain capability. We try to be lightweight and portable, and I know many people are happy with us because we have small footprint. So even though we have sometimes less capabilities than other customers, than other providers, I know users pick us because we have enough of the features they need, and we are still very easy and nice to use for local development and for quick integrations. And we try to really keep this aimed focus for application developer, to really try to address the needs of developers and making development of modern and secure solutions as easy as possible. So just a quick highlights on the roadmap. We invest in an external adapter, so we want to have a capability to secure applications without altering them at all, so fronting them with our adapter. Actually, that's another great example, because someone developed such adapter in the community, and right now we are working on refactoring this code base and migrating this plugin into KeyCloak repository. We will keep investing in OpenShift and Kubernetes space with service broker, operators, and capabilities like rolling upgrades. So that's high on our list. And we are also considering investing in the database-less configuration. So databases in OpenShift and Kubernetes in general sometimes are tricky, and in a certain use cases, it would make sense to just stick to distribute in-memory data grids, especially that such solutions can be passivated to database if people want it. And we will try to keep up with Istio for sure, and try to be the IDP of choice for Istio is our goal. Okay, if you're interested in more, there is keycloak.org website and number of resources there, our mailing lists and other resources. GitHub repository, and the all the whole development of a project is tracked in a Jira on jboss.org. Okay, that's all. Are there any questions?
Well, there were a couple, but most of them I think you answered in the presentation. The KeyCloak.org is where you can find all the documentation on this. Someone was just asking where the literature was, and they've got a pretty good, robust site there. And someone was also asking if this was OpenShift specific, to which I just answered no. It can run anywhere, and I just maybe you want to make that clear. It's not. I know I invited you here to speak on the OpenShift Commons, but really what I was trying to focus on was KeyCloak's usability in any cloud native platform.
Yeah, so we are not OpenShift specific. We can run on premise. So we are JVM based solution. So on your laptop, you can just download the zip and you can run it with JVM. You can run it locally as a Docker image, or you can deploy this Docker image via the templates into OpenShift or into Kubernetes. So both Minishift and Minikube would work. And there are examples how to do it.
So you also talked, a lot about community integration plugins. Is there, can you pop over to maybe a repo where they all are hiding? Is that organized in any way, shape, or fashion, like a Docker registry or something like that, where people can easily find them, or are they scattered throughout GitHub?
That's to do. We are planning to provide a registry of sorts on our website, so where people can simply send a pull request with details for their extensions.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, because I think that might be a nice next step for the community, is to organize some sort of directory of all the plugins, and I'm happy to help with that. So, are there any other questions?
So sometimes we're actually even taken by surprise how many of such plugins integrations. So recently I saw that there is a Helm chart in Incubator, and there are a number of such. There is a .NET integration for KeyCloak. So browsing stuff, like searching for KeyCloak on GitHub regularly gives a lot of pleasant surprises for us. So it's a pretty vibrant community on this side.
So I can add two more examples for community contributions. So we had the Go-based proxy that we are considering adding is today is fully maintained by a community member, and he's willing to hand that over to us so that we can put that in our main repositories. And then we also have a Japanese KeyCloak community, and they have actually taken our documentation and translated it to Japanese.
Whoa, that's a compliment. If anything is getting your documentation translated by the community is a definite compliment to the efforts that you're doing. So again, if people want to contribute, the best place to hook up with you guys is keycloak.org, correct? Or to log an issue in the GitHub repo. And then there's some mailing list that you mentioned earlier as well. So maybe.
Yeah, mailing list definitely, and the Jira for filing the issues. There is a question, about KeyCloak 4. So the final will be probably next week.
Can you reiterate that? As it was just Perforce? ETA.
Can you?
Yeah, sorry, I just didn't quite hear that. The ETA for KeyCloak 4 is just.
Yeah, I guess the question is about the date of the release of KeyCloak 4.0. So because there were betas released every 3 weeks recently, the 4.0 final should be released next week.
Do you guys hold any sort of working group meetings or SIG meetings, or where people can give you, can join you online yet? Or do we need to start something like that yet, or is it all good on the mailing?
We plan to start. So What's happening usually is when someone on our team is working on a feature, he shares a design on the mailing list, and the discussion flows on an async way. And the same, we actually usually turn down the PRs if they come without priorly getting in touch on the mailing list with the wider community. But we actually do consider starting to have some kind of hangouts, being more open and recording and publishing them on some design topics. But it's still to be done.
I'm always happy to host yet another special interest group in OpenShift Commons. So if you want to start up something around identity management and authorization or whatever you want to call it, let me know and we can hook you up with a calendar and everything else. But the more you do it in the open, the better, I think. And it does. And again, because the question around OpenShift, this isn't a purely OpenShift play, so it may be something that needs a wider audience than just OpenShift comments. So thank you very much for today. I don't see any other questions. So going. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank Boleslaw and Stian. And the video for this will be uploaded to YouTube very shortly. And then we'll put a blog with the links and the video embedded, and I'll tweet it out on OpenShift Common on Twitter. And hopefully we can get your feedback, and if you need to reach out to both Stian or hit us up on the mailing list. So thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Dan, for having us.